and welcome to Escape with me, Simon Calder. This is the podcast that takes you to the 7 seas and the 7 summits, whether you're starting in Sevenoaks or the Severn Bridge service station. And today I'm joined by travel guidebook writer Charlotte Hindle.
Hi.
Now, coming up with the Boeing 737 MAX, now looking as though it could be grounded through the summer. Will faith in that plane ever be restored? I'm just back from Paris, where I spent 48 hours researching where you should go in the French capital to make the most of a weekend away. The Travel Masterclass this week. Can you island hop your way through the Caribbean on a budget? And of course, the best place to be this week with our destination of the week, as well as the weekly warning and the best travel bargain we can find. But let's start with the Boeing 737 MAX. As you will recall, October 2018, a Boeing 737 MAX belonging to Lion Air took off from Jakarta. There was a fault with something called the angle of attack sensor. That is the device that measures the angle between the airflow and the wing. And if the angle gets too steep, then the aircraft is in danger of stalling. Boeing had installed an anti-stall system to counteract that, and the captain and the first officer found that they were fighting against the controls because the software built into the aircraft wanted to force the nose of the aircraft down. In the wake of that tragedy, Boeing actually announced that there was a possible danger, and it told the operators and the pilots how to combat the erroneous deployment of what they call the Maneuvering Capability Automatic System, and that is known as MCAS, and basically forces the nose down. On the 10th of March 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 with 157 passengers and crew on board took off from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia on its way to Nairobi. Shortly afterwards, the aircraft hit the ground and everybody on board died. The immediate investigations showed that the same problem, the MCAS, was responsible, and Boeing faced the grounding of the aircraft amid lots of questions about the design and the certification. At the moment, we are still watching those aircraft being parked on the ground at airports across Europe, across the Americas. And the question today is, will it, when it is finally certified to fly again, will you be happy to fly on it? Charlotte, would you class yourself as a confident flyer or a nervous flyer?
I'm a bit of a nervous flyer anyway, but I don't think I would be that keen in terms of taking my family on board this plane. That history is just an atrocious history, and I don't know why it wasn't corrected right at the beginning. It could have saved so many lives if that was the case.
Well, the designers thought that they put in this maneuvering capability augmentation system for a good reason, and that was to prevent the aircraft from stalling, because the 1960s was when the Boeing 737 was originally designed, and at the time it had wings very low on the ground. The idea there was you could actually have steps inside the plane, much easier, much faster, much cheaper for the airline. That was great. With the wings nice and low, maintenance was easier, all great. And you had small, thin, cigar-like engines. Gradually, we have discovered that the bigger, the fatter the engines, the more efficient they are. And in order to make the 737 MAX the most efficient ever, they had to put bigger, fatter engines than ever before on the plane. They couldn't put them completely under the wing, because if they'd done that, then the effect would have been to scrape them along the ground, basically. So they lifted them up, they kind of blended them in with the wing a bit, they pushed them forward, which is all good, except that it did increase the tendency for the aircraft to tilt upwards, and that's why they put in the MCAS system to nudge it down. Now, the problem was, if there is a faulty sensor and the system is responding to that, then, as we discovered, whatever the pilots do, they are likely not to be able to overcome that. And there is going to be a new software system, new training of pilots, and eventually the world will say, yep, we believe this is safe again.
Yes. Don't you think it's a tiny bit too late?
Well, it's certainly too late. These two tragedies, the worst disasters in recent times for
And it's a bit of a workaround. That's what worries me. Is, I don't actually want to go on an aircraft that's got a workaround. I just want it to be designed properly and safely in the first place. And it seems to me that maybe hasn't happened. And also it worries me that the testing is so rigorous these days in terms of new design, new aircraft. What went wrong?
Well, there are various points there. Okay, so the first one is, in terms of the design, it is said that actually when they were building it, the Federal Aviation Administration, which is the safety authority and would normally be looking very challengingly at every aspect of a new design of an aircraft, would be most definitely focusing on everything. But there is the allegation around that they effectively subcontracted the safety bit back to Boeing. And of course, it being an organisation, it was more inclined to say it was designed was safe rather than somebody outside chivying saying, well, what about this? What's this going to do? And what about the following circumstances? And certainly the question of whether they should have just designed an entirely new plane is a very good one. The Airbus A320, which is the second most successful aircraft ever built, the 737 being the most successful, is effectively a couple of decades later, and so therefore it does come with a higher wing, and therefore they have never had this sort of problem. I flew on the 737 MAX before it was grounded, perfectly good flight. Knowing what we know now, I'm not sure I would be so relaxed, but certainly once it finally comes back into flying, and remember that you've got Norwegian with a lot of these aircraft, TUI Airways, and more particularly Ryanair with many of the planes on the way, I think probably we will be happy to fly on it.
Okay, so what about the planes that are out there right now? How are they going to be fixed?
In a sense, you just download some new software. And that's going to be quite straightforward. So you've got a 737 parked on the ground at Manchester Airport, and all that happens is that they say, we've got some new software, upload it just as you would if you're updating your tablet or whatever, or the latest version of the operating system on your phone. So that's very straightforward. The crucial thing is how much pilots are going to get trained. And there's various elements of kind of what looks a bit like fudge. The idea was they wanted commonality. You build a new plane, you've got to teach the pilots how to fly the thing. If you say, oh, this is basically just the same as the 737-800, just a few new bits and pieces, then just an hour in the simulator and you'll get the hang of it. It's exactly the same. You could do it with your eyes closed. Bit like just going to the slightly newer version of the car you've already got. Nothing, where's the windscreen wipers and so on. It's as straightforward as that.
Okay, well, I'm still not going to be the first on board.
With something like this, there's quite a lot of irrational responses. I'm not accusing you of them. But anybody who says, right, I've got a choice between a 737 MAX and a car, I'm going to drive because I don't trust the plane, that would be completely mad because the risks dramatically increase.
Yes.
And what we're seeing this summer is lots and lots of airlines are flying really quite old. Every plane that's flying in the skies of Europe is properly certified, but rather than flying absolutely state-of-the-art brand new aircraft, you're flying lots of 20-year-old planes around which have been through the wars a bit because the brand new ones are grounded. So and certainly given a choice between a 737 MAX going straight there and a connecting flight, because that's the only alternative, most definitely go on the 737 MAX.
Off you go then.
Right, well, I'm not going to be flying one to Paris anytime soon, but Paris is the location for 48 hours this week. Oh, just back from there. So, Charlotte, starting in London, how would you get to Paris?
Eurostar.
Right, okay, the train through the Channel Tunnel. Let's say Manchester, how would you get there?
What, Manchester to Paris?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I'd get the train probably from... would I get the train from Manchester down to London and then out again? Or would I get just a flight from Manchester to Paris?
Just looking at the fares, you'd certainly just get a flight all the way. So I was booking slightly off peak, not very long in advance, and it cost me £99 to get there on Eurostar. one way, which was annoyingly much. I mean, it would have been a lot more annoying had it been over £100. But then coming back, they wanted over £200 one way. So instead, I flew on from Paris, Charles de Gaulle to Southend. Now, I actually looked temporarily at the buses and then I looked away because it was 9 hours I'd never get back. And I got a cheap-ish flight, about 50 quid on EasyJet to Southend. But then, of course, you have to go. It's ridiculous. You're at Gare du Nord. You know that London is 2 hours, 16 minutes away by that train over there, but you're not going to get it. You're going to get a little suburban one, which will take about 35 minutes from this subterranean platform to get to Charles de Gaulle. You're then going to have to find the right Terminal 2D. You're then have to go through security check, which is a lot more rigorous for planes than trains, passport control, sit around, wait for the plane to be 40 minutes late, and finally you get on the thing.
Sorry, what was the price differential?
Even with the train fare, 10 quid, call it, out to Charles de Gaulle and another 15 quid coming in from Southend to central London, I paid 70-ish compared with over £200.
Okay.
And yeah, I could have probably got the train from Paris to London and back in the time it took, but I'm afraid for an hourly rate like that, the hourly rate probably works out about 50 quid an hour or something. That's more than I could ever earn, so that's how I'm going to do it. 48 hours in Paris, a city I'm sure you've been to many times.
I have, yes.
Okay. I've always found that finding somewhere great to stay has been a problem, because you find somewhere which is absolutely lovely, and then next time you go there, it's really expensive, and the owner's changed or whatever, or it's been in a guidebook or well rated on TripAdvisor, and so it's just changed its character. So a couple of thoughts. First of all, the Hotel Crayon, as in crayon, as in that's what you do at school, just north of Louvre, so very, very well located, in the Rue du Boulois, which is kind of little Tokyo, fascinating area full of little kind of sushi bars. It's very bright.
That's a bit weird.
I know.
In Paris?
Yeah, but it's just
I want to stay in a Parisian area in Paris.
Well, I would happily pay
like Le Marais.
£100.
That's where everyone stays.
Well, everyone who can afford it.
Yes, it is, yeah.
I was there shortly before the Roland Garros, and that was why the prices were so high. So I didn't stay at the Hotel Crayon because they wanted too much money. I ended up in the Three Ducks boutique hostel, which is way over past the Eiffel Tower. On the southwestern side of Paris, perfectly comfortable, €40, so kind of 35 quid for
the Three Ducks.
In the Three Ducks boutique
in French,
hostel.
Though.
No, they call it the Three Ducks.
Canal.
Well, oh right, okay. Well, it is a perfectly good place, but it's kind of a €25 hostel, not a €40 hostel. However, I apparently got the last bed in the hostel. I have recorded a little bit of At Dawn, the bird song, mixed with the snoring of my fellow roommates. So, going shopping. I just love, of course, window shopping in Paris. It's great, particularly all the fashion boutiques. I was actually, there's a lovely little street called Rue d'Abequir, kind of halfway between the river and Gare du Nord. And I first went there on my first visit to Paris, which was when I was age 16. When did you first go to Paris?
Oh, I went with my parents. We spent a week there when I was 11.
Okay, all right. Well, I went there with my friend Chris, and that was all quite exciting. We were staying in a flat of a friend of his parents, and it cost nothing, but it was in Rue d'Abequir, which it turned out was the centre of the red light district. It's not anymore. It's full of fashion boutiques. However, my absolute favourite shop, which I discovered, is the Boutique de l'Assemblée Nationale. That means it's the shop of the House of Commons, effectively, the upper house being the Sénat, which is some distance away. So this is just on the left bank, and you can get all kinds of patriotic French gifts, like a tricolore toothbrush, and that's going to cost you €3.60. And it's just very different. It gives you a glimpse into the world of French patriotism as well. crikey, I needed a drink by the time I've been rushing around doing all this research. And these days, I remember looking back to that first visit, you would, if you wanted a beer in Paris, it was always really mean. You would ask for a demi-pression, and that was not a half litre of beer, as in demi, it was a half of a half litre. So a quarter of a litre, less than half a pint, frankly not worth bothering with and quite expensive. But now you can barely walk 100 metres along a central Parisian street without seeing a bar boasting of having a happy hour, which tends to extend from about 5 o'clock in the afternoon till about 8 o'clock in the evening. So you've got quite a wide window of cheap drinking, and they will all serve a pint. So a pint, which is actually half a litre, but we'll let them off because they're French. And I think maximum I saw was €5, and you could quite happily pay €4.50. So you're kind of getting a pint for less than £4 in central Paris, which, if you've been drinking recently in central London, you'll know is not at all bad.
What's the deal there in terms of when you are drinking outside?
You don't even think of drinking outside. This has always been the case, that as soon as you're on the terrace and you've got a waiter coming around bringing you your drink, then the price trebles. So
because you're renting the space, aren't you, as opposed to drinking the drink?
Yes, and you're being seen. So the best thing is to be standing at the counter, and that's what I did in the Bar des Volcans, the volcano bar.
I wouldn't do that, though. I mean, that doesn't sound...
Okay, so let me take you to the Café de la Paix on Place de la Paix, so quite a posh French brasserie. Opened in 1862 by Empress Eugénie, so it comes with great imperial connections, and there you can just sit and have whatever you choose, but you'll probably, if you sit down, then a waiter will come and serve you, and that will cost you a bit more. Please just go to the counter and order your drink. You'll be able to have two for the price of one, kind of.
Okay.
Now, let me take you to a site. France, of course, has some of the world's great art museums. Paris has the Louvre, it has the Musee D'Orsay, and it has somewhere where you're going to find very few tourists, and this is the Marmottan Monet Museum. It's right over on the west of the city towards La Défense. It was so far out of town, it used to be a hunting lodge. Did you know that?
No.
Okay, because it was in the middle of hunting country. It's not, it's in the middle of kind of lots of blocks of flats, but it does host the world's largest Monet collection. So, and it's got two of those great hits, Water Lilies and Impression Soleil Levant, an impression of the sun rising. And it's just a lovely little museum with relatively few people. Did you find this? And utterly charming.
Really intimate.
You just got sort of 6 rooms or so. You learn a bit about Monet, but mostly you think, oh, I must go up to his place in Giverny, which is just off the Seine. A lovely, lovely trip out there.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And just what's the deal with French museums? Are they closed on Mondays, or is it different?
Yeah, don't get me started about closing. Yeah, so some of them close on Mondays, including, I'm going to say, either the Musée D'Orsay or the Louvre, and then they switch around on Tuesdays. But honestly, so beginning of the week, yeah. And then, of course, for the Louvre, best day to see that, if you want to save money, is the first Sunday of the month. That applies only to European Union citizens, so get there quickly, everybody. And a surprise, which I like to bring people in the 48 hours section. And this is further west than the Marmottan Monet. This is the Fondation Louis Vuitton. Yes, him with the suitcases.
Yeah, fabulous.
And Louis Vuitton has spent money employing Frank Gehry, great architect, to design this Vaisseau de Verre, the glass ship, in the Bois de Boulogne, and it's basically a modern art space, which is a work of art in its own right, which is always very good. For example, I love the fantastic Guggenheim in Bilbao. The content's an utter waste of time every time I've been in there, but the look of it is great. Same goes for the Fondation Louis Vuitton, and it's just €5 to get in. You're going to get great, really fresh, different views of Paris from the terrace at the top. And most tourists haven't found it yet, so it's also blissfully empty.
I went there and I absolutely loved it, and it was just the actual shape is a museum. So you're walking through what you're supposed to be looking at. So it's the architecture which is so important.
Yes, always good. Let's move on to the Travel Masterclass, which also has a French connection, because the subject this week is, can you go Caribbean island hopping on the cheap? The Caribbean, of course, a wonderful collection of islands, kind of wrapping all the way around from the island of Hispaniola, which is Dominican Republic and Haiti, through Cuba, Puerto Rico. Then you've got the Lesser Antilles, all the way down, kind of this ring of pearls, all the way down to Trinidad, and then you collide with South America, not forgetting, of course, Aruba, Bonaire and Curacao over the north coast of Venezuela. The trouble is, in all my adventures there, it's always been incredibly difficult to get from one island to another. There are not the ferries you would get in, say, the Greek islands. There aren't the air services that you would expect in a civilised, reasonably well-to-do region of the world. And so
the cruise ships.
Well, there are the cruise ships,
but
and actually, well, no, and the short answer to the question, if I want to visit in the course of a week 7 Caribbean islands, what's the cheapest way to do it? Absolutely, get a cheap cruise, and then as long as you don't drink on board, as long as you don't buy the ship's excursions, you will have a budget week. But if you want to do a bit more, and if you want to see more than just being a cruise passenger, here is how to do it. First of all, don't set your sights too far. It's good to pick a couple of islands nations where the clue is in the name. So Trinidad and Tobago, 40 miles apart, and they've got a little ferry between them. Antigua and Barbuda, ditto. And then if you want to, then I think you can you've really got to pick your targets, and you've kind of got to begin from the ferry schedules, but you can, I believe, go from, and I'm going to have to refer to my map here, St. Lucia. You would then go north from St. Lucia.
So where are you flying into?
You're flying into St. Lucia.
Okay.
So you've got kind of 3 big arrival points in the Caribbean, which are Barbados, Antigua and St. Lucia. Those are the main ones. You go from St. Lucia north to Martinique, and there's a ferry there. Then you travel through Martinique, which is a joy, and get another boat, if there is one running, across to Dominica, to the town of Roseau. Dominica, lovely island, doesn't have a big airport, so therefore it doesn't get the numbers. Big volcano in the middle, well worth some time there. Not on the big cruise ship circuit. Dominica, you then go up to Guadeloupe, another French island, and from there, with a bit of luck, you can get a boat across to Antigua. But that's about as good as it gets. The US Virgin Islands have a few limited ferries between them. But what you want is a great link from Puerto Rico across to the Dominican Republic. You want another one from Haiti across to Cuba. And if you could do that, then you would have proper Caribbean island hopping. So the answer
but the frequency really worries me, though.
Yeah.
What happens if you've only got a 2-week holiday? Or
Well, you've almost got to answer the question, can you go Caribbean island hopping on the cheap? Well, not very easily. And of course, every night that you're staying in the Caribbean is going to cost you money, because there is simply not the budget infrastructure, except if you're looking at Cuba, maybe Puerto Rico, maybe the Dominican Republic, that you would get elsewhere. Very quickly, travel bargain of the week. It's June. Who doesn't want to be in the Greek islands? Well, quite a lot of people, I must say. Looking at the prices, I've just got these hot off the laptop. TUI has a week in Kefalonia. Been there?
I actually can't remember. Because the Greek islands is
okay.
A lot of them are sort of the same.
No, you cannot possibly say that. Apologies to all Greek island listeners. £191 going out of Gatwick, restating this is a proper package holiday. So you've got your flights, you've got your transfers, you've got your accommodation, you've even got a luggage allowance for the plane. Luton to Corfu, £195 for a week. And then Thomas Cook offering Stansted to Zante for £210. Sorry, they're all from the London area, but that's just the way the bargains fell this week. Now, you, Charlotte, are going to bring us a warning of the week about overcharging in the beautiful city of Budapest. The Foreign Office says what exactly?
Always ask to see the menu and price lists before ordering drinks or food, and check your bill carefully before settling up. So, some restaurants and bars have been known to charge extortionate amounts and to take tourists to cash points to demand more money. Oh my God, that's never happened to me when I've been there.
Well, that's partly because you probably haven't been into the sorts of bars and restaurants where this happens. And my rule is think of a fairly sensitive, naive member of your family or friend. If I were them, would I go into this place? And if the answer is no, then probably walk quickly in the opposite direction. Enough of going south this week. Go north, make the most of the long summer nights in the UK. That means Orkney or Shetland. Which would you prefer, Charlotte?
Been to Orkney, haven't been to Shetland, but I've read all the books.
Okay.
The novels.
Right, that doesn't quite count. I've been to both. I would pick Orkney every time. Also, it's really cheap and easy to get to there from the Scottish mainland. And
closer.
Yes. Closer, and you also got this wonderful thing, road equivalent tariff, the Scottish government's rule, which means that effectively if you take your car on the ferry, you're not going to pay any more than you would do if you were driving the thing along a road, if it existed, which it doesn't because it's Scotland, you're going to an island. So bargain time to go there. And that's all we've got time for now. We'll be back soon to help you plan your escape to Orkney, to Budapest, to the French Caribbean, or anywhere else you want to go. From me, Simon Calder.
And me, Charlotte.
That's goodbye from us and, of course, from the top technical team here at WebVid in London.